2005, about 300 companies, mostly large, but smaller ones too, spread throughout the Bay Area. The council focuses for the employer and business community on critical issues from an advocacy standpoint that affect the business environment and the economy of our region here, as well as around the state. The Economic Institute has a special role in that. We're basically the think tank part of the operation. We spend our time on research, analytics, economic strategy, trying to take forward-looking issues, what are sometimes complex issues, and put them together in a fact-based way that can be informative for leaders and knowledgeable people in the community here and around the state to help them understand what are the important issues to focus on today and for the future, and what are some solutions as we think about addressing these issues down the road. So this gets us into a lot of different issues, one of which we'll be talking about tonight. So before we get going on that, I think you all have noticed this wonderful space and this remarkable view. We have you facing...
We should turn the tables around.
We have you facing away from the view, so you're not going to be distracted. But would like to introduce our host tonight, Jim Henry, with PricewaterhouseCoopers. Jim is a member of the executive committee of the Institute and of the Bay Area Council as well. So, Jim, thanks so much for having us here.
Great. You're welcome, and welcome on behalf of all of my colleagues at PwC to everybody here. Glad that we could host it. Actually somewhat surprised because how popular the Bay Area has become as a place for people to come and engage in conversations like this around innovation, and we host a lot of clients and other groups through our international network of a couple 100,000 people around the world. And these meetings get booked about 6 months out, so fantastic. I don't know how you did it, Sean, but or maybe it was Navi, your brand, but we kicked somebody out, so I'm glad we're here. I won't go through a long commercial. As Sean said, I've got a role in the executive committees of both the Bay Area Council and the Economic Institute. The topic of innovation, I just wanted to say, is sort of at the center of our conversations in the executive committee in both of those organizations. And when we think about the Bay Area in general and what are the galvanizing themes that all of our member companies kind of rally around in terms of the initiatives that we support, innovation tends to be one of those core themes. And whether it's in healthcare or whether it's in infrastructure or something else, that's the thing that I think really makes the Bay Area unique. And it sort of pulls together all the assets that we have. And it looks like the topic tonight is not only on innovation, but it's innovation in the area of innovation. So look forward to the few minutes I can join and listen to it. I'm sure you'll enjoy Navi's comments. And again, we're proud to be part of the Bay Area Council, Economic Institute, the Bay Area Council, and many of you are clients and friends of PwC as well. So welcome to you all. Hope you enjoy. And I'll turn it over to you to introduce our speaker here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Before we get going, I just want to introduce our team from the Institute. Michael Weinberg, who's the incoming president, and Tracy Gross, our vice president, and Sari Navidi, and our faithful intern, Kildee, and also Alex Ford, and Kim Tespidis. Oh, and everybody's here. This is the whole team. Everybody's here. Turned out. Here, sorry. They work in our conference. So with that, we'll kind of roll straight in the program. This is the exciting part. It's really, really fun. I mean, it's a huge pleasure to introduce Navi Radjou. Some of you know him, but for those who don't, he's really an innovation guru at a global scale. I met Navi at a conference some years and years ago when he was doing really groundbreaking work in forestry research on a global innovation network, which is still just, it's been confirmed and manifested and made operational so many times. It's a phenomenal concept for analyzing what's going on now with innovation. around the world, and it really describes what's happening around innovation in the Bay Area. But he's taken that one further. He's associated with the Judge School of Business at Cambridge University, and now he has come out with his second book, about to come out with it on frugal innovation. And I think what he has to say tonight will resonate, I think inspire a lot of you. So Navi's going to talk for a while about his new book, his new process, product, and then after that, we've got really a remarkable panel of practitioners who are in their own industries implementing right now the ideas that Navi was talking about. And then as soon as that's done, we're going to open it up for conversation with you all. But let's go straight into it. Navi, look forward to hearing your thoughts. Great.
Thanks so much. Thanks a lot. Can you all hear me? Okay, perfect. It might be too much. I think let me turn that off. And I have a big enough voice. I think I should be able to handle this. So I'm delighted to be here, and of course, my challenge is I'm going to be distracted by the view out there. So I will try to kind of, concentrate on your cases instead of getting distracted by the Bay Area view. So I want to thank, of course,
the handheld. We had this problem yesterday with the echo. The handheld, if anybody has trouble hearing, that's on the chair, might work a little bit better. Okay, sure. That's it. Behind you, or yeah, one of those. Okay. Is it on?
Hello. Can you hear me? All right, here we go. That's good. So I am actually so excited by the 5 speakers coming after me. I'm going to try to keep it very, very short, be frugal in time. So I'm going to spend about 20 minutes to set the context for what is frugal innovation and why it's relevant for the Bay Area. First of all, how many of you have heard about the concept of frugal innovation? A third of the room. That's quite exciting to see that. But some of you maybe heard about frugal innovation in the context of emerging markets, but not necessarily in the context of developed economies. So let's begin with giving credit for the concept of frugal innovation from where it was, when it originated, which is actually emerging markets such as India, Africa, and Brazil. In those regions, of course, as you know, scarcity is prevalent. Lack of resources in terms of energy, capital infrastructure is very well known in places like Africa, India, or Brazil. But what you notice is that you have these amazing ingenious entrepreneurs who are able to tap into the ingenuity to address with this resource constraint. Like Mansur Prajapati, who has invented, I would say, the world's greenest fridge in India, which is made entirely of clay. It doesn't consume any electricity, and it can keep fruits and vegetables fresh for 5 days and milk fresh for a couple of days. Okay? So the first lesson you learn from emerging markets is that lack of resources is not a constraint, but can be a source of innovation. Another example comes from Peru, in Lima, the capital region, which has 95% humidity, but only 1 inch of rainfall. So local engineering college has devised these giant advertising billboards that convert the air humidity into drinkable water, generating over 9 liters of water every day. Okay? So this is another amazing, food innovation. Now what you begin to see is that these food innovations are being taken to a larger scale. This is Dr. Devi Chetty, surgeon in India, who operated on Mother Teresa, and now it operates this, figuratively speaking, of course, a very giant health campus in southern India, where it operates on heart surgery. It does heart surgery for about 1/10 of the cost that cost in the United States. Okay, so this is something that is a boon for a country like India, where 750 million people do not have access to healthcare. And this is not charity, right? We actually devised the business model using things like micropayment, so that even the poorest people can afford quality care. So it's not about philanthropy. It's about having a real business model that is frugal. And then Africa, in my opinion, is going to become the real laboratory for food innovation, where Africans now, like in Kenya, use the service called M-Pesa, which allows them to send and receive money without having a bank account, using simply their mobile phones. Nearly 70% of, or say 50% of the GDP now in Kenya is transacted through the system. Okay? And this is becoming the platform for acquiring other products and services, including like, solar energy, for example, which is based on the same system. But then where it gets interesting is that food innovation is practiced at a more interesting level, like science and technology, where we claim in the West to have a monopoly because we can invest, big R&D dollars in things like space exploration programs. like the NASA did when they launched this mission to Mars last year called the Navi. It cost them $700 million and 5 years to develop that. Except that 3 weeks later, India launched its own mission called Mangalyan, which was executed 3 times faster and 1/10 of the cost. Okay? They simply did something amazing, like for example, they did more prototyping virtually using software instead of doing physical prototyping and things like that. Okay? And the satellite entered Mars orbit on 26th of September last year, which was a proud moment in Indian history. So that is what's happening in emerging markets. The question is, you might say, well, Navi, that's really interesting, but you're talking about some relatively poor people in the third world, and it's okay they do frugal innovation, but here in the West, so why do we have to care about it? Well, simply because, strangely, or maybe in a not pleasantly way, the economic context in the West is becoming not the same as emerging markets, but alarmingly so. Simply because, to begin with, the economic recession that began in 2008 is beginning to induce a very new behavior among Western consumers. Simply because, among other reasons, the diminishing purchasing power of the middle class in this country like the United States, which lost about 40% of their wealth between 2006 and 2011. And today the top 20% richest people in this country account for 60% of consumer spending, which has never been heard before. So in Europe, the situation is even worse. So the real question is that as consumers become frugal, are they going to change their mindset once the economy so-called recovers? As you can see on the right-hand side, this is actually wasn't intended, this is from PwC, so this is a study that shows that even when the economy recovers, people will remain frugal, that is, live with less. On the right-hand side, you can see that. So frugality is becoming more like a permanent attribute of consumers rather than a temporary phenomenon. And not only they're becoming more value conscious, they're becoming values conscious. That means more consumers are willing, if you focus on the first 2 rows, they want to work for companies that are socially responsible. And even more interesting, look at the second row that shows that actually they're willing to pay even more for product and services that may be more environmentally sustainable. Okay? So they're becoming frugal because it's also a cultural choice, not just an economic choice. Okay? So this is particularly pronounced among the generation Y and Z, the millennials, who actually have very different aspirations, less materialistic aspirations than my generation, which is X. They are less interested in having, a big mansion and a big car, and more interested in doing the right thing for their families and for the planet. So they're becoming less consumerist as well. And one thing that they often ignore living in the so-called first world country is that there are many emerging markets that are not yet served. For example, many people don't know that the 70 million Americans today are underbanked. They don't have access to full gamut of services that we take for granted, like having a debit card, credit card, or having a saving account. So you can imagine that's the size of the French population. That's a big market to be tapped. And there's a lot of innovation happening in Silicon Valley by startups who are trying to crack this market. So because of all this, to go to the second part of the presentation, what is happening is that you have the rise of what I like to call the frugal economy. This is an economy which is powered by consumers themselves, who are evolving from passive users of products and services to prosumers. This is a term coined by Alvin Toffler, a futurist, who believes that consumers have the power to start creating their own products and services in a very localized way. So why that's disruptive? Because if you look at the traditional business model of most companies, it's far from being frugal, right? The way they are managing the value chain, the supply chains. Big factories, shipping big items in big retail box, big box retail stores, and then we drive miles to go buy stuff, right? Makes no sense. So imagine a new world where supply and demand start meeting much closer home. More decentralized, right? And suddenly there's a blurring between who's the supplier and who's the customer. And this is why we call it prosumers. And this is going to be powered by 2 phenomena, among other things. The first one is the sharing economy, as you all know about Airbnb, and which is now the 5th largest hotel chain in the world without owning a single hotel. Isn't that amazing? And look at the speed at which they're growing, as you can see from the quote from the CEO. And again, this is completely fluke. I have to say, PwC, again, just published a study that sizes this market, because that was a big problem. Nobody sized the market. And they found that this market for sharing economy, powered in a bottom-up fashion, is going to go from $15 billion today to $350 billion by 2025. 20 times more. Okay? So this is very small, but it's going to hit a tipping point within 5 years. Okay? So next phenomenon is called the maker movement. Again, it's a Bay Area phenomenon where everyday citizens were able to showcase their amazing inventions. I call it the kind of the MacGyver spirit, kind of thing. It began in 2006 in San Mateo, and Mark Hatch from TechShop will discuss about that as well. But what's amazing is that this is now becoming more than a movement. It's becoming a new platform for launching new kind of products and services. And this is made possible because you have the democratization of electronic components. Like this one is called Raspberry Pi. It's an entire computer the size of a credit card, invented at Cambridge University. It cost only $35. Initially intended to educate children on computing, programming, but now it is being downloaded or shopped, bought hundreds of millions of units to make hardware stuff by open source developers. Okay? So this is why it's going to democratize, if you like, access to these kind of components that used to be very expensive. Once you have components, next step is where do you put them all together? Assembly line, as you call it, right? Before you have to go to big factory, right, to put them all together. Well, the assembly line, the new factory, is going to be TechShop. And Mark Hatch, the CEO, will talk about it. This is a place where you can actually go and have access to cutting edge, industrial equipment and start making your own products. Some of them could be for your personal use, or you can even start building companies around it. So the Bay Area is known for software startups. I think the next revolution is going to be hardware startups. So people even talk about, social manufacturing or reshoring. Basically more manufacturing coming back to the US after leaving us for a long time. So because of that, I want to quickly touch upon 3 startups from the Bay Area who are leveraging these trends to really do more with less. This is my neighbor from Palo Alto, and he has launched a company called G-Drive, which essentially are wireless sensors designed like a plastic ruler that you can plug in different parts of a field in California. And the farmers can begin to track the conditions of the soil, ambient temperature, and begin to optimize the use of water, energy, fertilizers, and labor as well. So this is important for California because it's, I think, one of the top 5, right, food producers in the world, and also facing major water shortage. So this is in agriculture, it's happening. This is in finance. 20% of US households don't have a debit credit card. How do you want to shop online, like Amazon? How do you want to pay your bills, your rent? Well, Clearly Near Me is a Silicon Valley company. Unfortunately, the CEO couldn't come here tonight. So they enable essentially cash payment for electronic transactions. So you can buy something online on Amazon and then go to a local 7-Eleven store to pay with cash. And this is important because $1.2 trillion of commerce in this country is conducted using cash. So this is going to be disruption in the finance as well. And then finally, in healthcare as well, we have some very interesting examples that come from Silicon Valley. This is Embrace, a startup that was, interestingly, the product that was launched at Stanford as an idea, and then it prototyped at TechShop, and today is a company run out of Southern India, serving globally. This is a baby incubator for premature babies that looks like a mini sleeping bag, and this cost $200. This one, which is a more familiar for us in the West, costs $20,000. Okay? Yet it accomplishes the same mission. Okay? So very useful solution. Again, it's a kind of a solution that was born in the area as well. So the last part of my discussion is to say this is all interesting that startups are doing this kind of frugal innovation, but how can large companies embrace this concept? So for that, of course, shamelessly, you have to read my book. I have to plug in that book, of course. There's a copy here if you want to take a look. But I don't want to go there. Well, I want to kind of quickly summarize what is the essence of this message for big companies. So the big companies, I think, especially US companies, have to learn to do more with less. So concretely, what does it mean is that maximize value while minimizing resources. So maximize value sounds simple, but it's about for customers, not just for shareholders. More value for customers, especially prosumers, and a society, being socially responsible, right? And then, when it comes to resources, it's not just money, but natural resources, and then more importantly, time as well, which is the scarcest resource for most companies. So I want to, rather than going into theory, go into very, 5 quick examples of practical companies, and then we'll do the, let other speakers, chime in and talk about how we're implementing this concept as well. First example, I'm going to start with consumer goods and then go into more, healthcare, education kind of sectors. Consumer goods, this is going to be the company that's going to disrupt the car industry. It's called Nissan. They launched 10 years ago the world's cheapest car called Logan, $5,000. Initially destined for emerging markets and suddenly became a blockbuster in Western Europe. And today this car model accounts for 40% of their cash flow. And now they're going to launch the next car this year. It's going to cost $3,500. Initially for emerging markets and potentially will be introduced in Europe as well. Okay? So this is in the car industry. Next one is Unilever, and they have Margaret DiGiorgio. We'll talk about that, but I just wanted to kind of set the context for it. When I say more with less, the less applies, as I said, to natural resources. And this is a great statement because it shows that inherently it's a conflict when you say more with less. We don't know how to do it. We know how to do more with more, but more with less is possible. Well, this company is trying to do it. And their CEO, Paul Polman, says by 2020, they want to double the company's revenues. It used to be 40 billion euros. So you can imagine what that means. At the same time, reduce carbon footprint by 50%, which is incredible. Third example is from Pearson, global learning and education service provider. And we have Diana Stepner, who is here, who will be talking about the company as well. And they have hired an amazing person, Sir Mike Barber, who is the Chief Education Advisor, who is tasked with two big mandates, which is to make education solutions more affordable to everyone in the world, but also drive more accountability to the education system so that we can start measuring the outcome of educational learning solutions on people who actually buy or subscribe to the solutions. And then I will talk about how they're doing it. And talking about accountability, there is one sector, I'm sorry to say, that often is not seen as very accountable, which is the healthcare. We all know that if you don't control healthcare costs, you're going to have $4.7 trillion healthcare sector in this country, which is not very sustainable. So this is a case study never published before, which is in my book. I'm quite excited about it, which is Aetna, one of the America's largest health insurance company, which essentially wants to become the Google of healthcare. And this is the game plan in a nutshell, which is essentially to self-disrupt themselves, to go from being a traditional healthcare provider based on a premium kind of model to shift to what they call value-based care solution. And as you know, value-based care is a very big paradigm shift right now in the US healthcare system. So we are actually assembling a bunch of companies to become the digital enabler of this value-based care model, which is about delivering better care for patients at lower cost by making providers more accountable for the health outcomes of patients. So this is in the healthcare sector. And more info, you can watch my TED Talk, and then there's a website we have set up called Frugal Innovation Hub, where we are going to actually have more case studies and best practices, broadcast as well there. And that's it. So I hope I tried to kind of rush through as many slides as possible, but now we are going to actually have Sean and introduce one by one the 5 amazing speakers. We're going to talk about how they are applying frugal innovation within the industry and more importantly within their company. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Navi. That was a great way to begin. And I'm going to ask our rather amazing panel to come up here and maybe kind of grab a seat in this order. In fact, in the order that's in your program, that makes it kind of simple. So first we have Margaret DiGiorgio. Margaret is the Global Director for Technology Discoveries at Unilever. And also Malay Gandhi, the Managing Director of HealthWalk. And Mark Hatch, CEO of TechShop. And Diana Stepner, the Vice President for Innovation Partnerships and Developer Relations at Pearson. She just heard about. And Emma Stewart, the Head of Sustainability Solutions at Autodesk. So you've got their bios. They're amazing. Each one of them is going to give some perspective on how they view this as a strategy from their company's perspective, how it's being implemented in their company, and they'll each talk for. Hello? Okay. They'll each say something about that, and then after that, we'll open it up. Anyway, so Margaret, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Is this on? Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Good. So I guess first of all, I'd start by saying that advances in technology, I believe, are going to underpin, accelerate, and drive all aspects of our business going forward. My role is essentially technology discovery, and in that role, part of what I'm trying to do is build relationships with academia, VCs, startups, and key partners to drive innovation back into Unilever, both sustaining and disruptive, to drive business growth. It's a broad remit, and essentially our corporate strategy sort of defines my areas of focus. Navi mentioned earlier that we have some big ambitions. We have something called the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. And as he said, our ambition is to double the size of our business while decreasing our environmental footprint and increasing our positive social impact. So essentially from an environmental perspective, we're looking at everything from how we source raw materials to how consumers use our product. From social and economic dimensions, our products make a difference in health and well-being, and our business supports the livelihoods of many people. On any given day, over 2 billion consumers use our products, so we really feel like we're uniquely positioned to make a difference. So what does this mean for my role in technology discovery? Well, I'm looking at a broad array of technology. And essentially, I guess first of all, I want to deliver ongoing business value to drive growth. So I'm looking at trying to deliver a balanced portfolio of incremental, adjacent, and more disruptive innovation. I want to basically balance risk and reward while driving growth. That said, if I had to give you some examples of what we're looking at, the combination of big data, analytics, and sensors, something actually Navi mentioned in one of his examples, is something I'm very interested in. So we're looking at how we can use that in our supply chain to reduce consumption of natural resources. I'm also very interested in how we can use that technology in conjunction with our products, particularly as costs continue to decline of that technology. So, there's all kinds of interesting examples I can point to, but more and more in our households and in our daily lives, everything is becoming connected. And what's really amazing and really interesting is that the solutions we're starting to see are solutions that are really new and novel, more affordable, and much more accessible to large numbers of people. If I gave you one example I found really compelling, some new technology that's been launched to diagnose treatable eye conditions in remote villages where medical care is scarce. A great example, in my mind, of frugal innovation. Other examples of customized hearing aid technology that's much more affordable and therefore much more accessible to so many people. So I'd say, the bottom line is we're really inspired by how technology can essentially improve the lives of our consumers on a daily basis. And in summary, I guess if I had to put it in a nutshell, my role is very much about identifying innovation that's good for our consumers, good for our business, and good for our planet.
I guess we'll go next to you.
Thanks. I'm Malay Gandhi from Rock Health. Just out of curiosity, since we're not Unilever, how many of you have ever heard of Rock Health before? Cool. So our mission basically is to fund and support entrepreneurs work at the intersection of healthcare and technology. So we're most well known for running a seed fund that exclusively focuses on health tech. And so, I think this conversation is so interesting because you're talking a lot about large companies and there's large companies represented here. we're typically the first dollar into a company, if not like within the first few million into a company. And so the startup company essentially is frugal innovation. You have no resources, you have no weight, you have no distribution, you have no unfair advantage. You literally have basically nothing to create value. And if I look at our history, I was just trying to tabulate in my mind as Margaret was speaking, I think we've used less than $3 million in invested capital to date, and those companies have now gone on to raise more than $250 million additional dollars in follow-on funding. So unbelievable, actually, what we've been able to do with such little money. So let me step back from that, though. I think our whole model is about frugal innovation. It's about using very little to make a big impact in healthcare. So when we raised our fund last year, our third fund, we set out with a pretty simple investment thesis, which was use technology to reduce the cost of healthcare. And for us, this is pretty simple. You know, in this country, everyone knows we spend an inordinate amount of money on healthcare, much more than any other industrialized country on earth. And when you look at that, healthcare is such a big part of the economy, and over the last 2 decades, we've seen unparalleled, economic growth, largely driven by labor productivity. So overall economy up 2.5% per year. And I'm talking real GDP, 1.8% driven by labor productivity. Healthcare up 2.3% per year over the same time period, so roughly equivalent to the overall economy. Labor productivity is down 0.6% per year, each year for those 20 years. So the only sector of the economy where we can't find a single gain in labor productivity, and that's largely because there's been zero adoption of information-based technologies. Incredible adoption of new medical technologies, new drugs, new devices, new diagnostics. What we put into a large bucket called accretive innovation. So give me a little better outcome, a little better drug, a little better molecule, and I'm going to pay you an inordinately high amount of money for it. Give me a robotic surgeon that can't produce a better outcome, but sure enough, we're going to pay for it. Give me a $20,000 incubator instead of a $200 one, and sure enough, we're going to pay for it. Lucky for us as investors in technology companies, that day is over in this country. We are not paying for accretive innovation anymore. We need things that cost less and deliver more. So we view this time as unparalleled to be investing in tech-based healthcare companies. So our fund has supported overall in our life about 54 companies working across healthcare. And so when we set out to raise the fund, top line thesis, use technology to reduce the cost of healthcare. So if a company comes in, pitches me and says, here's what we do, and if they can't show me how to reduce the cost of healthcare, we throw it out. And we're actually looking for order of magnitude improvement, because that's the only way to sell into the healthcare system, something that is dramatically better. So we set out and we looked for the big areas of cost. Where do we spend money in the healthcare system today? There's 2 areas. 2.2 trillion of the 2.8 or 2.9 goes right into delivery, in the hospital, delivered by physicians and specialists. So we call the hospital a location, and there's a location stack. So you got the hospital, you got surgical centers, you got the physician's office, you got urgent care centers, you got retail clinics, worksite clinics, your home, and then your mobile phone. You're just walking around getting care. That's the location stack. What we want to do is find technologies you stick in at every layer and cascade care from the hospital into the home or just into your pocket. Same thing on the labor stack. We don't need the highest end surgeon or specialist to do every piece of care. You don't need a physician. Maybe you need a nurse practitioner. Maybe you don't need a nurse practitioner. Maybe you need a nurse. Maybe you don't need a nurse. Maybe you need mom and dad. Or maybe you can just care for yourself. So we're looking for technology that enables people to do more within the labor stack as well. So a quick example of a company in our portfolio, I mean, I could literally go on for days, but I know we have about 6 minutes here, so I'll just use one concrete example of a company that we funded almost about getting close to 3 years ago now, with only $20,000. So they developed an Autoscope that you can slide right over your iPhone. And if you'll indulge me for 1 second, I'll actually try to demonstrate how easy this is. It's my phone, my iPhone 6. I can just snap on this little case here to the Autoscope. Let's see if I've got this Autoscope in my pocket. Get it out. Snap it in. That's it. Now I have Class 1 registered medical device on my iPhone. Does anybody in here have children, have kids, young kids, or had young kids? Maybe they're grown up now. Okay, I don't. I don't have any at all. I'm not going to sit up here and tell a story that I do. My understanding is they get lots of ear infections and they're pretty annoying. They have a tendency to happen in the middle of the night on Sundays when your doctor is not available, of course. And moms and dads know what it is. It's an ear infection. It's their kid is screaming. They've had them before. Apparently, lots of kids get them chronically. You might even have to have tubes put in your ear. So this device was designed for that very specific problem of parents having kids who have ear infections, and you don't really want to go into the doctor's office because you know what's wrong. So here's what you do now if you live in this state, at least in California. You go on Solscope's website, for $79 you buy one of these devices, you stick it inside your ear. I would demonstrate, but I don't know if anybody wants to see the inside of my ear, but I promise you it's very, very easy to capture the images. In fact, on average in all the user testing they've done, within 2 tries you get it exactly right. You get diagnostic quality video. You push a button and it gets beamed over to a doctor who can get you a script if you need one. So that's kind of cool, right? That's available to consumers. You don't need to go through the healthcare system. You don't need to interact with anyone. You just go on their website and order it. It's $79, and then you pay $49 for a read, or you can buy a subscription package. So that's kind of an interesting concept. Like, oh, cool, all right, it's very convenient, but it's not really frugal when you think about it. Like, how many people have $79 and they want to pay $49 out of pocket for every visit? Now, if you value convenience, you'll absolutely pay it. We know there's a big market in doing that. Here's some big ideas behind the company, though. So the first thing you see is when a doctor can look at video whenever they want to and nobody comes into the office, they can make a very simple recommendation. They can say, you know what, let's just wait. And that never happens when you go into the doctor's office because they need to make a decision on the spot, and they always err towards giving you the script that you wanted when you came in. And now instead they can say, why don't you send me the video tomorrow and let's see if it gets worse. You know what they do with kids in India who have ear infections. I'm sure you do. They don't do anything. They don't treat ear infections. Most of them just go away. But in this country, we love antibiotics, so everyone gets prescribed antibiotics. But with this, they can say, just send me the video again tomorrow. It's not a hassle for a parent. They don't have to drag their kid back in the office, and so it sees lower prescription volumes. So that's the first big idea of the company. The second one is they have more video now of the inside of a human being's ear than's ever been captured before. It turns out no one's ever captured video of the inside of someone's ear. It's only lived inside of a doctor's brain. And they have computer vision specialists at the company now watching all the diagnosing, treating, and outcome pathways. So they know what the diagnosis is that the physicians rendered over telemedicine. They know how the progression of the ear looks because they tell the parents, keep taking video of the inside of the ear. So once they get on treatment, you're looking at the antibiotics. Is it treating it? Is it improving? Maybe it's not improving because it's a viral infection. And it turns out with computer vision algorithms, they can know whether you have an ear infection. You don't even need a doctor to do it because the algorithm knows the answer. And so the really big idea is complete automation of ear infections. And that's just one type of image that they could capture using basic cameras on phones. So the really, really big thing for us is, fine, we moved care from physician's office or emergency room to the home, but we can do the same thing on the labor side. We moved it from a nurse practitioner or a doctor to a parent, but we could potentially just fully automate the whole thing. So that's just one example of one of our portfolio companies.
Very cool. Thanks, Kevin.
Cool stuff. I gotta get one of those.
$79.
I'm gonna ask the same question. How many here have heard of TechShop? So just about everybody. Good. So the thing that surprised me in the last probably 36 months or so is that everything I thought I knew about innovation, having practiced innovation and so forth for decades, has fundamentally changed. It isn't as expensive as it used to be. It's easier to get to markets than it has ever been. And it's true not just on the software side, but also on the hardware side. And yeah, that's the magic piece. So our members, so we have 6,800 members now. We have 8 locations across the U.S. We'll be opening some in Europe, actually this year. We plan on being in every major city eventually around the globe. And the kind of the driver is when I joined, I met Jim the founder at an event, and he described this as kind of Kinko's for geeks. I run the geeky part of Kinko's for a short while. And I went to each of the tables that first day and I asked the entrepreneurs there, why are you here? And each of them to a man said they had saved 98% of their startup costs by doing it at TechShop. 98%. 2 orders of magnitude, roughly, cheaper than what it had ever been. That is truly revolutionary. What that does is it literally democratizes access to invention. You don't even need to be in the middle class anymore. We had a homeless man reboot his life last year. Literally spent his last $50, became a member, took the laser cutter class, and rebooted his life. Our estimate now is that the 3 locations in the Bay Area have helped spawn $12 billion in incremental shareholder value from people coming in and launching companies, 2,000 jobs, $200 million in annual sales. This is on about a $20 million investment. It's like the most obvious thing to do at the moment is to open one of these at a major university or in a downtown. So I'll just give you a couple of samples of what folks have done. The most famous one, of course, is Square. So I've got the little device here. Hopefully you're all familiar with it. What you may not be familiar with, though, is the story that goes that's in behind it. You know, kind of the obvious one. They went and raised a bunch of money and launched, but that isn't how it happened. James McKelvey, who lives in Kansas City, came up with the idea, called Jack Dorsey up, his buddy, and had this, like, we should put a thing on an iPhone, or we should use the iPhones to help disrupt merchant banking. So they sat down with the 10 ostensibly smartest investors on the planet here in the Valley, and the conversation went something like this. Hey Jack, welcome, glad to see you're in here. What do you know about merchant banking? You're a code guy, right? Twitter, Twitter and Blogger. So, you know, not a lot, but I can code, so I can code the piece. Like, okay, well then James here, he's your merchant banker, you know, Chase, Visa. No, he's my buddy from St. Louis. He's a glass blower by training. That's what he's been doing for the last decade. Oops, that PowerPoint did not fly. So they sent him home. Well, what happened was James came to TechShop, picked up the skills he needed. So he took the classes, learned how to use a mill, took an electronics class, learned how to build the electronics, built the 3 prototypes, and he did this in a couple of months. Then they went back, and this is my favorite part, they went back to all the top names, and instead of doing a PowerPoint, they literally just took $50 off each of them, and never gave the money back. So they just went in and took it. And here's the punchline, right? If Jack Dorsey can't get funded without a prototype, good luck. You've got to build a prototype. That is one of the biggest hindrances to the Industrial Revolution, was the capital was so expensive to get access to, only those with lots of capital could have access to it. Now, glass blowers can upset the merchant banking industry in less than a year. So another similar story, it's not quite as powerful. Again, $6 billion valuation, hundreds of employees. Does anybody else here have a Dodo case by chance? I'm off in a room this size. So this is an iPad case. It was designed, developed, prototype in Menlo Park, our first location. It's a beautiful little case, got bamboo. So the guy who found it comes in and he asks, what classes do I need to take to learn how to make an iPad case out of bamboo? 90 days later, he had sold $1 million in product. He didn't have the skills when he crossed our door. Learned the skills, built the prototype, launched the company, and in 90 days had sold $1 million in product. He did $4 million in the first year, $10 million in the second. We believe he did $35 million in the third, was on track to do something on the order of $60 million this year. He's got 25 employees in Dogpatch. 90 days to becoming a successful entrepreneur. That's the new reality. For $125 a month, you can have access to the same tools that GE has, that Unilever has, and that others have. Another segue. The other thing that it does is it unleashes the cognitive surplus of entire companies. So one of our partners is Ford Motor Company. They funded a location in Detroit. Within a year, through some efforts around open innovation, they saw a 100% increase in high-quality patentable ideas coming out of their existing employee base, merely by essentially opening up the R&D lab. because nobody gets to go in the R&D lab. So he said, forget that. I'm not going to wait for R&D to open up the lab. This guy was on the patent side. I'm just going to build one with TechShop, and everybody can come in. And now the entire community is there, and they've seen a phenomenal increase in innovation. But I'll stop.
Impressive. Next up, Diana.
I think I'm going to try to do it with a microphone if I can. So I'm Diana Stepner. I'm the head of vice president.
Can't hear you.
Okay, it didn't work. Oh well, thanks. So I'm Diana Stepner. I'm the vice president of innovation partnerships and developer relations. So I have one of those titles that can mean a lot of different things. And I think that's also very representative of Pearson. Pearson is a learning provider, and learning, as we're seeing today, means so many different things. But from a Pearson perspective, we can help you build a school, from identifying the location to helping you put in all the facilities to helping you populate all the materials that a teacher would need to help train the teacher to getting all the curriculum and the courses up and running. And so we're a very large company from that perspective. But what people typically know us as is a book publisher, to be perfectly honest. And I'll switch that on its head. Now about 60% of our business is digital. So again, we can do so much more, and that's very reflective of what learning and education means. It happens anywhere, anytime, in any type of scenario. And so as learning has changed, so has our business. The reason I'm sitting here today is because of a program that Pearson has that focuses on efficacy. And the word I use often instead of efficacy is outcomes. A lot of us have spent a lot of money on our education, and we walk out with skills that we thought would enable us to have jobs, potentially for the rest of our lives. And what we're finding with ourselves, with students graduating today, that they often don't have the skills they need to actually be employed, or to be successful, or to achieve what they want to achieve. So Pearson did something about it. What we said is we're going to actually judge the outcomes of our products. Our products should actually do what they say they should do. We're going to judge ourselves to ensure that we are providing the students that we teach, the teachers that we work with, the institutions that we partner with. We want to ensure that they're achieving the outcomes that we set out to deliver. So we have a program that focuses on efficacy. But instead of keeping that just inside of our walls and having that be something that we talk about at board meetings or in senior level meetings, we made it open and public. So if you go to efficacy.pearson.com, it actually works very well on your tablet or your phone, but it also is there for anybody to use. So if you're a startup and you want to ensure you're focusing on the right thing, if you're part of Pearson or competitor, anyone, you can actually go to this site and learn about the importance of outcomes. And you can also use that insight by downloading it to have a kit to help you go through each step of the process. So whereas a company that often is seen as quite traditional, as Pearson is, we turned our own program on its head and made it public, made it available for people to use. As a result, we're not just saving money by pushing aside products that, to be honest, didn't do what they were supposed to do. We're letting other people do that as well. And so as a result, we're not saving money just on our own, we're also enabling all the companies in learning, whether they be large or small, to be able to benefit and reduce their costs as well. Another program that we run within Pearson is the one that's in my team that's called Pearson Catalyst for Education. It's another example of frugal innovation. Instead of looking inside and just determining that our roadmap for the next X number of years is going to be very structured and done in a very logical manner, we've disrupted that approach. And we've made challenges from the business public. We're not perfect. We know we're not perfect, so why hide it? We've shared our challenges at catalyst.pearson.com, and what we do is ask startups to help us out. So a program or a project that may have taken us 2 years, and to be honest, a lot of money to do, we've actually opened it up. So a startup of 2 kids, for example, could actually provide a solution in a couple of months. And we've seen this in practice. The first round of Catalyst, which was launched in 2013, there was a group of students who actually were just graduating from Stanford. They founded a company called ClassL, And they built a module that enables students to manage their schedule. We found that students, even though they're brilliant, they get into the top universities. What kind of catches them up is that they don't know how to manage their schedules. Typically in high school or elementary school, that's done in a very programmatic way. University is often the first time that they have to manage their schedules on their own. And so these two kids were seeing that they were struggling, their friends were struggling. How do I know what to do when? So they created a calendaring application that helps students manage their time. Pearson has a product called OpenClass. It didn't have a calendaring application, but we knew it was a need. We worked with ClassL. They were able to integrate it into our product in 3 months. It saved us 2 years. So this is an example of how we, again, are doing this, but we're making it public so that other people can benefit from our learning and can benefit from the realization if you make your own challenges public, startups can help you address it, you can save money, the startup can grow quite successfully, and the end consumer can benefit. So that is my story on Pearson.
Thank you. Emma Stewart. I run a relatively new product group within Autodesk called Sustainability Solutions. And you probably know Autodesk for AutoCAD. We're a 30-year-old software company, so we're ancient in Silicon Valley. But we have about 100 other products that serve the manufacturing, infrastructure, and architectural industries. So really the built world around you is often designed by our customers using, often, hopefully, our software. And I've had an interesting ride at the company because I've always been someone focused on, speaking of outcomes, environmental outcomes. So I would say my career has been driven by that. I've worked in every sector now, from academia, nonprofits, consulting, and now the private sector. And the reason that I took the job at Autodesk was I thought it had a very powerful lever in its products. But unfortunately, what I learned was that to the degree that it embraced sustainability, it was really rather rudimentary. It was about green the company, write a corporate social responsibility report, and I viewed that as kind of a tick-the-box exercise. And frankly, as a software company and an environmental scientist by training, I knew that that had almost no impact. In fact, I like to say that ExxonMobil blinks. That's the equivalent of Autodesk from an environmental standpoint. So I got bored in that job, and I started experimenting with our own software on our own facilities, realizing that I did have some sway over our own operations because I was responsible for quote-unquote greening them, but I really didn't have any business getting into our software. And I probably made some, not enemies, now friends, but I probably made some short-term enemies in the process because I started pointing out gaps in our products. What this led to was actually something that ended up filling a gap for our customers that we have since taken to market, which is called rapid energy modeling for existing buildings. And it's a no-touch energy assessment of existing buildings, which Autodesk often forgets. That's 99% of the building stock, even though we like to think about new construction all the time. And doing so just with photographs and with aerial images. When we started doing that, we being me and the one person I was able to hire, we didn't think it was possible. Now the US Department of Defense is using it on their Army installations. So that got us noticed and hired into the business. Now we're a legitimate product company, a product group with our own developers out of Shanghai. And I would say from a perspective of frugal innovation, we're trying to do two things. One is enable frugal innovation among our customers, and a second is exemplify frugal innovation in how we operate. I talk about us as intrapreneurs, so we try and maintain an entrepreneurial mindset, even though we sit within a public Fortune 1000 company. So I'll give you a few examples of how we aim to enable frugal innovation. Some of what Autodesk has traditionally been really good at is taking very expert, very involved, very demanding processes and trimming them down, making them available to the masses. So taking something like energy modeling of a building, which really only 2,000 people in this country are qualified to do, and making it available to every architect on his or her desktop. So Autodesk was already reasonably good at democratizing. So now what we're doing is taking things like the life cycle assessment of building materials, something that will cost you $50,000 just to start per material. Imagine the number of materials in a building. So no one's bothering to do this. Yet we foresaw there was going to be market demand for this. And one of the other things we tried to do was look outside the company. So we actually teamed up with a customer to create this product. They had been, I'll call it, duct taping together our product with data that they had to purchase at a very high price, with a variety of schedules and templates that I won't bore you with. And they were frustrated, and we said, well, how would you like to commercialize that? We're a software company, we know how to do this. You're an architecture firm, you know what you need. So that product hit the market in March and has been selling among the large architecture firms much better than any of us expected. So that was one takeaway, look outside. Don't assume that we and our product managers know how to build something best. Another example is something we launched just last week, actually. We had a product launch here in our headquarters called AutoCase that does an automatic triple bottom line analysis, so that's financial, environmental, and social, of an infrastructure proposal before it's built. In fact, before it's more even than a napkin sketch. Because we've imbued it with so much intelligence into the data that it's hoovering up, the data that it's culling from peer-reviewed literature, that you are actually able to get, even just with a napkin sketch of your infrastructure design, what the societal impact would be on the local community, what the environmental impact would be both locally and globally, and what the financial impact would be to your client. So those are two examples where we're trying to enable frugal innovation among our customers. Then turning, lastly, internally and trying to act like entrepreneurs. One thing I've found is that even though my team and our resources have grown really dramatically over the past 3 years, I always co-fund. I always look for someone else to put skin in the game, even if I can afford it myself. And that has a number of effects. One is it defrays your costs. Secondly, it allows you to point for your own executives to the fact that someone else is willing to do this, and it makes you look frugal, which is always appreciated by your budget owner. So that's one thing I found that works. The second, and Mark mentioned the importance of prototyping, minimal viable product. Get it out the door. Test it many, many times. And have more touch with your customers than anyone else in the company. Because if you do that, you're representing the voice of the customer. No one can really argue with you. And then lastly, avoid memberitis. So I noticed that, especially in the sustainability realm, people feel they don't want to be left out. They want to be a member of the next new thing, the next big group, the next consortium, the next conference. And what that means is that you're spending an ungodly amount of money and you're not really getting anything in return because you're not actually able to spend your own time and your own thinking. So I dramatically cut back what Autodesk was involved with, and I said, we're only going to look at energy efficiency in existing buildings. We're only going to look at stormwater and flood resiliency, and we're only going to look at materials in the automotive sector. That is hard at a company that covers as many customer bases as we do, and it was painful for me, and I'm still struggling with it. But that's something that allows you to really unleash your innovation and maintain your frugality. Thank you.